So it's early July today in Southwest Michigan, and I am in front of a little kill plot that we planted in Seclusion 360, which is a Clover Chicory blend from Northwoods Whitetails. We planted this a little over a year ago in the spring of 2023, and very, very poor soil. I think our soil test said that the pH was around 4.8, if I remember right. It was just a progress just to try and get the soil up to snuff. But we still have a really bad problem with weeds. And so we've mowed it already twice this year. And now that the clover and chicory is a little bit more mature, we still have a lot of weeds. So I'm coming in here today with some IMOX from Keystone Pest Solutions. And I'm going to spray that today and try and knock out a bunch of these weeds and grasses. So IMOX is a great solution for your clover plots if you don't know really what to spray without killing the clover and chicory. Now, if you got a straight food plot just with clover, you can spray like a 2,4-D or a Butarac, but you can't do that with a clover and chicory plot because the Butarac will kill the chicory. So one thing I wanted to share in this video is as I travel the country, visit landowners, they're telling me that their clover plots are not coming back very well the second year. They say that they've got a good crop on the first year, but not so much on the second. And when I ask them what they planted, a lot of times I'll find out that what they planted was a blend of perennial and annual clovers. And when you really break it down and you look at the percentages inside that bag, you'll find that a lot of it is annual clovers and a lot of it is coating. So there's very little in those bags that have perennial clover in it, which is going to come back every year. So I just wanted to show you what's in this blend here of Seclusion 360 from Northwoods. And what you'll see here is we got some white clover. We have the chicory, and this chicory is a high-end chicory. It actually grows about a 3 to 4 foot taproot, like in the very first year. We've got some other clovers in here that are a little bit different. Now, John at Northwoods has a variety of different ladino clovers in this blend. Jake and I, my buddy Jake over at Habitat Solutions 360, he is also a land manager and does a lot of traveling around the country. It's just rocking on Jake's property because he has been planting Seclusion 360 for several years. And he actually has a picture of his dog Pepper walking through the clover chicory. Generally what you'll find is like in the summertime, the deer tend to hit the clover more than the chicory. And then once you get into that hunting period at around October, boy, they really hammer that chicory big time. So Jake and I are of the mind that, man, if you're going to plant clover, you might as well plant clover that's got some chicory in it.
Now, when it comes to choosing what kind of clover you want to plant in your food plot, there's a couple things to consider first before figuring out what you want to plant, and that is, what is the food plot going to be used for? Is it just a kill plot? Is it going to be like a destination plot where you really want to put on a lot of biomass and feed a lot of deer? The other thing to consider is this a food plot that you want to plant every year? Is this something that's way in the back 40, kind of hard to get to, kind of a pain in the butt to plant every year? So in those situations where I don't want to plant it every year and it's pretty small and I just want a highly attractive plot to act as like a staging area or a kill plot, generally I'm going to recommend a perennial clover, which is going to be your ladinos, your white clovers, white Dutch, Durana, and Cura. There are others, but these are generally going to be the ones that are popular choices for deer food plots. And these are going to be more attractive to deer. They're a little bit slower growing because it's a really tiny seed, which is why you really don't want to plant this very deep at all, because it doesn't have a lot of energy to push through a lot of soil. And you can generally get about 5 to 7 years out of these true perennial varieties if you take good care of them. Now, in the other category on the annual side, there's your biannuals and your annuals. Now, the biannuals, you can get about 2 years, maybe 3, depending on how well your soil is, how well you take care of it. But in this category, you have your medium reds, your mammoth reds, yellow sweet, and Alsike. But generally, your medium red is a good choice for guys who have really sandy soil, very poor conditions, and they're just trying to raise their organic matter. Over here on the true annual side, where you're only going to get 1 year out of these choices, You've got your crimson, your berseem, balanza, arrowleaf, and ball. One of my favorite choices for building organic matter and creating a lot of biomass and feeding deer is the crimson clover. I like to plant crimson with my grain blend, which is oats, rye, and peas, maybe winter wheat, and then I put crimson in there because the winter rye grain and the crimson will come back the following spring. It'll feed deer, it'll feed soil. It's a great weed suppressor. They do a great job at building organic matter. Now, even though crimson is probably my favorite, I will use medium red instead in really cold areas like the UP of Michigan or northern Wisconsin and Minnesota, where it really gets cold in the wintertime. And medium red will have a little bit higher survivability in really cold temperatures in the winter versus crimson, which could actually freeze out. Now, if you are trying to build organic matter and trying to improve your soil, you would not want to plant a true perennial because it is a slower growing plant, and so the turnaround time on a true perennial is not like you're going to have over here on your annuals, which grow much faster. So if you think you might have a hard time remembering all this and you're watching this on your phone, go ahead and turn your phone sideways so that this screen gets into full view on your phone, and then just take a screenshot. And I'll also leave a link to a screenshot of this in the description below if that's easier. So in the food plot that I'm going to be spraying today, I used Northwoods Seclusion 360 blend. So if you look close at the label, you'll see that almost 60% of this bag is perennial chicory and almost 40% is perennial clovers. And I believe John has a blend of different ladino clovers in this bag, but that means that 99% of this bag is going to come back the following year, and then the following year after that, and the year after that. So it's a true perennial, and only less than 1% of this bag is non-seed. And that's very important when you compare this seed to other leading brands out there that's available to you. For instance, here's a blend here that is available in a lot of popular big box stores like TSC or Blaine's Farm and Fleet. But what I wanted to point out to you is if you go out and buy one of these clover blends off the retail shelf, you always want to look on the back of the package and look at this label and find out exactly what's in it. Right here we have the label, and it's kind of hard to read, so I broke it down here in red. So of this seed variety here, we've got 28% of it is true perennial seed. We've got 38% of that blend is non-perennial seed, so that's going to be some of your annuals, right? And then get this, 34% is non-seed. It's actually seed coating. And I'm just here to tell you right now that clover does not need seed coating to grow. John does not have any seed coating on his clover seed over at Northwoods, and it performs beautifully. Here's another blend from the same company where this is marked as a chicory blend. And if you look at it, we've got 40% of it is a perennial chicory and another 39% is a non-perennial clover. So this is a chicory blend that does not have any true perennial clovers in it. Not that that's a bad thing because they do mark it as a chicory blend. So if we look at another brand here, this is another clover blend out there where 26% of this bag is perennial seed, 39% is non-perennial seed, and then you have 35% is coating. So only about a quarter of this bag is seed that's going to come back year after year. If you're looking for a perennial blend that's going to come back 5 to 7 years, this is probably not the choice that you want to make right here. So now if we look at another popular brand, this is marketed as a clover blend. You see that we actually have 24% of this bag is ryegrass, and that's a big strike right there, right off the bat. And if you look at the percentage of actual deer food that deer really like, you're at about 59%, but none of that is a true perennial. It's all in the annual category. And then, like I said, the ryegrass is what I call lawn grass. 24% of that is non-deer food, basically, and 17% of the bag is coating. So to sum up this popular brand, none of the seed in this bag is a true perennial. Then when we get to the most popular brand, the brand that I find guys are planting the most, and this is the most well-known brand out there of clover blend. If we look at it here, we've got 34% of this bag is perennial seed, There's 32% that's non-perennial seed, and 34% of the bag is coating. So really, if you're planting this very popular brand in your clover plots, only about a third of this seed is going to come back every year. So if we look at a cost comparison of all the brands that I just listed in the previous slide, I put them all here on one screen, and you can kind of see the side-by-side cost comparison of each of these brands. So the Northwoods Seclusion 360 Clover Chicory blend, like I said, 99% of that seed is going to come back year after year after year. And when you break that down, that comes out to $13 a pound for perennial seed. Now in brand A, this Clover blend is a 3-pound bag. Only 28% of the seed in that bag is going to come back multiple years. The other 72% of that bag is not perennial seed. And so if your purpose is to plant a perennial food plot to come back every year, why would you buy a bag that only had 28% of the seed is actually going to do what you want it to do? And because such a low percentage of this bag is perennial seed, that actually drives up the cost of the perennial seed. It drives that cost up to $29 a pound if you needed that much seed out of that bag to plant a half acre like Northwoods does. That same company with their Chicory blend, that's a 3.7 pound bag. 40% of that one is perennial seed, but 60% of it is not. And again, per pound for perennial seed, that is $29 a pound. And then you go to brand B, which is another Clover blend. That's a 4-pound bag. Only about a quarter of that seed in that bag is going to come back every year. And that's at $30 a pound for that perennial seed. And then the most popular brand out there, the one that most guys choose, and everybody thinks that is such a great quality blend, that's a 4-pound bag, and about 1/3 of it is going to come back year after year. And when you look at the cost for that perennial seed in that bag, it's at $60 a pound. Now, one of the things I hear from some landowners is they don't like paying shipping costs. So if your goal is to plant a perennial food plot that comes back year after year, if you look at what Northwoods has in their Seclusion 360 bag and even some of their other Clover blends, you're going to find that almost 100% of that bag is going to come back year after year. And at $13 a pound, which is less than half the cost per pound of these other guys, plus you're only getting 40% or less of the bag is going to come back every year, then even after you figure in shipping costs, you're still paying less for good perennial seed from Northwoods as you are picking it off the shelf at some of the big box sporting goods stores. Now you might be wondering, why are some of these brands so much more expensive? Well, when you look at their fancy packaging with the big bucks on the front, and you look at the pro staffers that they have to pay and big advertising costs, and you have a retailer that's also going to take a cut out of that bag, then you can see right away where these seed companies, they can't afford to put high quality true perennial seeds in their Clover blends and still make any money. So they have to substitute with cheaper annual seeds, and they have to put a bunch of coating on there, which is also a cheaper seed, and that's how they create that profit margin and still be able to make money. So if you don't care about plain packaging and you know you don't need any seed coating, and you want at least 99% of that seed in the bag to come back year after year, then to me, a Clover blend from Northwoods is the obvious choice. Now, just so you know, Northwoods doesn't pay me to say these things. I just recommend what I use myself, and I want to recommend to my clients what works as well, so that my clients have the highest chance of being successful and meeting their goals. And my buddy Jake and I, we decided a long time ago we were not going to go down the sponsor route because we wanted to be able to pay what we use and be able to speak freely. So here's an example of a small food plot that I planted in Northwoods Seclusion last year. This was a really small food plot that is inaccessible by any big equipment at all. Can't even get an ATV back there. And it's just a small 1/10 of an acre surrounded by bedding, and the only way to get in there without deer knowing is to walk through the cattails. Anyway, I call it my little honey hole. And very, very poor soil. Again, pH below 5. And I had to plant a grain blend in there for a couple years just until I could get that soil and the pH up to snuff. And so then finally, last year in August, I planted Northwoods Seclusion blend. First thing I had to do though is I had to mow it as short as I could because I wanted as much soil exposed as possible, because remember, the seed is really small. Then after mowing it really short, I had to literally rake it off because it was just too much duff and too heavy to blow off. So I had to hand rake the whole thing. Then I came back and broadcast all the seed. But what I broadcasted first is about 50 pounds an acre of oats, and I planted that as a nurse crop because it's just an annual, and it's really going to help that seclusion blend to germinate much better. And then on the second pass, I went over it with the Seclusion 360 Clover Chicory blend. And then I followed that up with a mixture of Plot Doctor liquid lime, fertilizer, calcium, and starter from Brad over at Harper Growing Solutions. And even though it germinated well and it started growing really well, boy, the deer were in there heavy and they were browsing it hard. Matter of fact, once we got into December, there was basically nothing left. It was right down to the dirt, and I was really doubtful that I was going to have any kind of vegetation come back because, man, I thought they just decimated this whole plot being so small in the middle of bedding. But I didn't show up again into this plot until just about a week ago, around the 4th of July. So it had been 6 months since I had been back to this plot, and it's been totally neglected. The weeds were very tall. They were probably up to my knees, and I was pleasantly surprised that the clover and chicory actually came back very, very well. And of the weeds that did come in, I just had to go in there the other day and I used a weed eater to knock them all down. It really revealed a lot of good clover, a lot of chicory in there, and I was really pleasantly surprised. So this is going to be a great plot this year. So now moving forward, all I'm going to do is wait for the weeds and the clover to start growing again, and then I'm going to go in there with some clethodim, which is a grass-only killer. So it'll kill the grass, which is really the biggest competition in this plot for the clover chicory. Then I feel that the clover and chicory ought to be able to outpace the few weeds that are left all by themselves. And maybe sometime in late August, I might have to hit it with a weed eater one more time to knock down the weeds, but the grasses will be gone. But now the work is done on that plot, and I can enjoy a beautiful perennial clover chicory plot that the deer are absolutely going to love.